Hey there, welcome to my channel. I am Anjali, and today we will be painting 4 different types of tropical leaves in watercolors. These come out really beautiful and are easy to paint if you follow along with me. So let's get started with the supplies. I have used the Princeton Real Value series synthetic brushes and Woodlands and tropical palettes from Watercolor Confections by Prima Marketing. First we begin with the Monstera Leaf. This is a beautiful leaf and we only require the yellow and green shades from both these palettes. I really love the moss green and daylight colors from the Woodlands palette. So I have mostly used these two colors for painting all of the leaves in this video. I start painting the Monstera leaf on one side by starting with the outline and then filling in with the paint, leaving out the areas where there are holes on the leaf. After applying the paint and spreading it across the leaf, I also add in saturated paint in certain areas while the paint is still wet. I chose to first paint the left half of the leaf before starting with the right side. So we first apply a basic wash of all the base colors, and then I begin with the second layer by starting with the darker tones and adding shadows and highlights wherever necessary. The beauty of watercolors is that you can reactivate the dried paint pigments to avoid hard edges by blending them in with the tip of your brush and using a little water. Since watercolor is a transparent medium, we always start with the lightest colors at the base and then build up with darker colors and shadows as we go along. I now begin painting the right side of the Monstera leaf in the same way as I painted the first. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. One of the reasons why I find watercolors very therapeutic is because of the way the paints blend into each other, especially when you're using a wet on wet technique, which is where you apply wet paint onto the base layer when the bottom layer is still wet. Watching the paint bleed into each other is very relaxing, and you can also control the amount of bleeding required by adjusting the amount of wetness of the base layer. Try to keep the wetness just as a glazing and that water doesn't pool in areas of the paper. Now I add some final details like shadows. Since the leaf is folding in the center, I want to show that using a darker green on one side. Blend the dark green paint all through the entire surface of the left side of the leaf so as to not have any dark edges. Dip the brush in clean water and blend the paint as you go down so as to increase the transparency. I now add some final details on the leaf like veins by lifting up some of the paint. For this, I draw in some lines using clear water and then use a tissue paper to pick up the excess paint. And here is the finished Monstera leaf. Next up in this series is the palm leaf, which is considerably easier than the Monstera leaf in comparison. We start by mixing the same two colors as before. Start by painting the central rachis or the spinal structure for the palm. Then you move on to the leaves. You just start with a really gentle pressure at the beginning and you apply pressure to the central part of the leaf because that is the broadest part of the leaf. And then once again you release the pressure so as to obtain those nice tapering edges. Make sure that you mix the two greens, which is the yellowish and the dark deep moss green. And then just before you paint, dip the tip of your brush into the really dark pigment, and then when you paint you get this nice dual tone which gives a very natural look to the leaf. Once you're done, just darken the outline or just draw a line in the center once again. In the end, I'm just adding a few details, darkening some of the leaves randomly so that it looks more natural. And that's it. The beautiful palm leaf is now done. By the yellow-green tones that I'm mixing, you probably would have guessed that the next one is a banana leaf. So we start with painting the base layer as always. We just completely paint it in using this yellowish green tone. After that, you can apply a layer on the edge of a little darker tone of green and blend it in using water. Cover the entire area of the leaf using this really light green tone that you start with. After the base layer has dried, we can add the shadows later on, but for now we just cover it up and make sure it's not the same tone of watercolors all throughout. You need to leave some spaces of white or really light or transparent tones so as to have some interest and have it looking organic. One of the reasons to use really good quality watercolor paper is because even if your watercolor paint has dried, if the paper is of good quality, the paint reactivates right away as soon as you apply some water. So you can always blend your paints in beautifully. As you can see, the darker edges had sort of dried up, but as soon as I used water, they blended in and there are no dark or no hard edges now. Now, since the top part where I have the leaf fold has sort of started to dry, I'm going to apply the darker green paint where I need the shadows to be. Now we have to wait for this base layer to fully dry before we can add the rest of the details. Now I move on to adding some more shadows. Now, in order to show shadows underneath that fold, I drag the dark paint across the leaf and I blend it in, adding more water. Now I'm just going to add some shadows on the side of the leaf. I need to add some shadows on the right side of this leaf, so I paint and then I wash my brush and with clear water I spread that paint across the leaf. Now to create some of those veins with my clean brush, which is also slightly damp, I just streak across the leaf creating these vein patterns. Now adding some final pigment to that folded leaf. As you can see, some of the paint is bled, but you don't need to worry because you can easily just pick it up with a tissue paper or a napkin. I'm loving how this round brush is holding its tip so well that I am able to paint even the most thinnest of details and lines to my painting effortlessly. I really recommend these brushes from Princeton. They are the real value set and I ordered them on Amazon. And the third tropical leaf is now complete. Now we begin with the Erika Palm, which is very similar to the previous palm leaf that we had painted. And once again, we only require these two paints, which is number 16 from the Tropicals palette and Deep Moss from the Woodlands palette. Mix the paints really well so that there are no grains or anything in the paint. Once again, the painting process is very similar to the previous palm leaf, except that these leaves are a little more spaced out. Finally, just thicken out the central stem by painting over it once again. And that's about it. I think you just learned to paint 4 tropical leaves along with me. I hope you enjoyed this video and painting along with me. If you do create something similar, please do tag me on Instagram at the Letters of an Architect. I would love to see your creations. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you so much for watching once again. Have a great day.